Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales, proudly presented by Membrain. This podcast is your gateway to mastering the craft of modern selling. If you're passionate about growth, impact, and unlocking full potential in sales and revenue, you're in the right place. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And now let's get started with today's guest.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Art and Science of Complex Sales. I'm Paul Fuller, and today we're digging in. We're digging into 3 incorrects that stall sales performance. And not just what they're doing incorrectly, but also how to fix the things that are stalling performance. Our guest is Steve Reid. Steve is known as the Revenue Accelerator, and he's founder and CEO of Venatas. He's a 3-time entrepreneur, and he's helped 8 venture-funded companies go from startup to exit. And one recent success was an 18-month run where he grew a company's revenue by 400%. So Steve is someone that has the experience, know-how, and is worth listening to. So I had a great time learning from him. Let's get started with Steve Reid.
Steve, welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales. How are you, my friend?
Doing very well, Paul. Thank you for having me on your show.
I'm excited for this. And quite frankly, we should have been recording for the past 15 minutes because I love that conversation. But do you mind just jumping in, giving a little bit of your background in sales and what you're doing today?
Sure. So I got into sales after first spending 10 years in marketing and working my way up through the ranks in marketing and, up to a director level at a very large kind of multinational, multi-billion-dollar company, and then had an opportunity to go join a group that we were going to start a company from scratch. So we spent 4 years building a company. And what was interesting is we were really at heart, we were an engineering firm, but we had to figure out how to make money as we were working on our technology, because we knew that sort of our exit was going to be our intellectual property and the patents and the things that we were going to develop, but we had to have time to build this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was charged with everything that didn't have to do with either finance or technology. So that meant marketing, it meant sales, it meant customer success. And, as a startup, we figure it out on the fly. Yeah. And I kind of fell in love with the whole idea of how do we go sell stuff. And so when we successfully exited that company after 4 years, I stepped back and thought, what's next? And I decided, did my pros and cons list, like literally drew the line down the center of the paper and said pro here, con there. And it was like, if I have the choice, which I kind of do, what I do next, what would it look like? And when I read the what would it look like list, it looked like a sales job. And so I decided, okay, well, this is the right time to do it. So I pivoted into sales and started learning how to sell. But I think the thing that really benefited me is that I had been a buyer. I had to make a lot of buying decisions, as a company leader and executive, and I knew what good selling looked like. And I knew what, the kind of selling that I didn't prefer and the kind of salespeople that I didn't want to buy from, and those that I did give my business to over and over again, and that I would follow from company to company. And so I just always thought, if I'm going to sell, I'm going to do it from a buyer's perspective. I'm going to put myself in the buyer's mindset to understand what could be the most helpful thing. And really, to me, it kind of comes around to solve, and the selling happens naturally. So if we solve the business problem, the business issue the customer cares about, then the sale is the outcome. And so that really has guided. And so for 30 years, I sold, and I carried the quota, and, I had to live the life that a lot of salespeople live, on a daily basis. And then I got the opportunity to move into sales leadership, and, I've done sales ops, I've done revenue ops, I've done sales enablement, and, all the way up to a CRO. 5 years ago, I decided, okay, look, this is the year I'm turning 60. This was 5 years ago now. But and I'm kind of done with the grind of being on the road all the time and, being in 12 executive meetings every week and staring at spreadsheets. I want to think about the years that I'm going to continue to work and winding this career down. What do I really want to do? And what am I most passionate about? And can I create a situation where I can do more of that? And so the thing that I love to do is coach and mentor and help companies solve problems as they're looking to grow and scale or solve a revenue issue. And so I decided to start my consulting company 5 years ago, Venatas. And that is what I've been focused on and what I've been doing. And it has been just a joy every day to be able to get up and kind of work in my flow state and do the things that I love the most. So, and I live here in Austin, Texas, and that's kind of me.
Well, your career spans everything. I mean, just looking at LinkedIn, like I said, sales enablement, sales operations, head of marketing, head of sales, VP of sales, enterprise sales. Do you have a favorite type of like what has that driven you to, like a favorite type of selling or company that you're working with?
Yeah. So, just by the way my career got started, I have spent most of my selling career in technology. So whether that's a lot of SaaS, or it could also be IT infrastructure, cybersecurity. It's the whole world of technology has kind of been my sweet spot. Now, depending on the kind of software product that we sold, we had to learn a lot about the industry that our software served. So there's been things like logistics and warehousing. There's been even predictive analytics for student success in higher education, a software suite for that. So it's been really interesting to kind of learn different industries through the lens of the software that we can offer to help, solve a problem there. But the thing that I firmly love the most is working in smaller companies. So there was a time where I had a team that was a global team, 250 selling heads. We had a $600 million a year quota, and that was complex. And, it was very challenging. It was hard work. But at the end of the day, I felt distant from the customer just by the nature of what it requires to kind of run an organization of that size, how much delegation is going on. And so after I sort of wrapped up that opportunity, I consciously decided, hey, I want to get back into a smaller company, because it's being part of a startup myself and starting a company from scratch and doing that thing I described a few minutes ago. Like, I love the energy of that. I love the accountability of that. Like, that we're so much closer to the outcome, and it mattered a lot whether or not you were able to get the job done, and you could see it really, really quickly. It couldn't be hidden anywhere. And so I like that accountability. And then also it sort of like triggers my competitive juices, right? It gets me super involved. And so I decided to go work for startups. And that's what I spent really the last 10 to 12 years doing, is working at various startups. And I was fortunate enough to be aligned with a venture capital group and a PE group. And after we worked on one of their companies and we got it in a good position, they asked me, like, can you go help some of our other portfolio companies? And so over a period of 10 years, I jumped from company to company 8 different times. And that was by design, because I wasn't there to be the long-term VP of whatever. I was there to help the team that was on the ground that just got this funding figure out how to scale and meet the requirements of the investment group, but really find their way to that high valuation and that future that they were all looking to invest in. And that's where I learned how to be a consultant, because we had to go in, get a lay of the land and figure things out and do it pretty quickly. So good news is, like, 6 of those had positive exits. And the other two that I worked with are still growing concerns and doing great. They're just not an exit point yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what I love, and that's really what I focus my practice around, are companies that are in that scaling motion. Because I think that's where I can help the most, and where they need the help. Large, huge, 300, 500, 600 million dollar companies, I mean, I can help in some ways, but look, they've got a lot of infrastructure. They have a lot of capital available to them, and they have systems and processes already in place, or else they wouldn't have gotten there. So companies that are trying to grow into that more operational rigor, and how do we break through and set another plateau, those are the companies that I think I can help the most, and that we can measure the impact. So that's it.
So let's talk about those. I have two core questions around that. I'm going to start with the first one, but so as you're going into this, just for you've obviously worked in a lot of them and are continuing to work in a lot of that type of organization today. What are some of the key issues that are facing sales and revenue, go-to-market overall in that space? Like, what's the noise that they're hearing? What are the issues that they're facing? And how are you helping them get by that?
Yeah. So I think I would put things into two different buckets. So internally, some of their approaches, I see commonly I see three things at the heart that we can work on and we can get better at. The second bucket would be what is going on in, just sort of globally with the way buyers want to work with salespeople.
Okay.
And so let me just address the first one. So the first one around, like, what do we see commonly going on inside of organizations that we can help with? I call it the three incorrects. Okay. So in these can all be fixed, right?
Pretty direct.
Yeah. Right. So, okay, look, if we're trying to solve a problem, we have to call it what it is. And so if the issue is, and this is not my opinion, it is data that is backed up through years of research. What we know to be true is that almost 50% of salespeople do not attain their annual quota. Like, they miss their target. And this is at least a 10-year trend that is going to, so like last year, it was around 42, 43% of salespeople did not attain their target. And a healthy selling organization needs about 80% of their salespeople to be at least at 80% of their quota number. Like, you can grow that way. You can keep the lights on. You don't have a lot of financial pressures. You're healthy. So how can we get you there? And what's going on that kind of can explain and that we can focus on to change? And so it's these three incorrects. So first of all, we incorrectly assume how good our sales team is. So we incorrectly evaluate the skill set and the capabilities of our team. So we use an evaluation methodology that isn't about personality. We're not like introverted, extroverted. That doesn't predict your ability to sell. It just tells us like what your personality is. And that could be a culture fit. It could not be, whatever. That's important. But like, can you sell? So we have an assessment that looks at the core competencies of selling. Do you know how to hunt? Do you know how to value sell? Do you have the right level of commitment and motivation? It's those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And that's the true evaluation that we need to be doing, because it tells us the strength of every individual that's on the team, but also collectively, how is this team wired and equipped to do our kind of selling? Mm-hmm. And if we have gaps in skill sets, well, now we know what to go address, right? And we know how to hire more precisely, fits for this type of selling. And we can set realistic targets. So I think it's one of the problems. If you think your team's better than they are, you set a target that's too high, then they don't hit them, and then you're frustrated. And it's just this cycle, and you can't trust the forecasts. They're always inaccurate and all of that, right? So incorrectly assessing the skill set of your team. The second incorrect is we are following an incorrect selling process. So if we have a process, typically it's kind of a default out of the box process that looks a lot like other processes. But the problem is it is focused on us as a selling organization instead of focusing on the customer as the buyer. And I really believe that we have to be much more buyer aligned. And this, again, comes from my own experience, having bought a whole lot of stuff, knowing that I didn't care about that customer's CRM configuration and their checklist and what stage I was in their process, right? Like, I'm glad you have all that, but I need to feel comfortable with the decision, and I need to do a thorough and objective evaluation so that we're spending the money correctly for our organization and we're getting the value we're looking for. Can you help me do that? Whatever your process is. And so it's all about my need as the buyer and not your need as the seller from my perspective. And by the way, I'm going to be the one who's writing the check. And so what I try to help companies understand is, like, whatever we're doing, we do have to have a disciplined approach, but it needs to be buyer aligned. And so do we know our buyer well enough to create a selling process that really helps the customer make a confident buying decision? It's that solving part. Does this process help the customer solve the problem that they're coming to us with? Then the final incorrect is we incorrectly train our salespeople. So 80% of sales training is focused on the product. So therefore, we create an army of product experts. They can demo the product well. They can show you how it works. They can help you learn how to use it. They can train you on it. But what customers are telling us in the research is that it's not the product that is holding me back from having the ability to make a confident decision. It's that I don't know if I have a strong business case that I can sell to the folks who hold the checkbooks here. And so, and part of that is that they view salespeople as not being really savvy and capable of solving business problems. And they talk way too much about the product and not nearly enough about understanding the nature of my business, what my role is, how we're measured, and how this thing is going to get approved or not approved. So therefore, many, a high percentage of complex deals end in no decision. You didn't lose to a competitor and you didn't win the business. We put this thing on hold for now because we could never reach a consensus idea internally with a buying committee to say we need to spend $100,000, to do this because we're convinced that we need it and this will solve the problem. And the salesperson did not help me make that happen. So we don't train the business acumen skills that equip our salespeople to understand how to run really good discovery, how to be buyer focused, how to create a business case, how to do really strong value alignment, and how to do really strong close management. And those are literally the things that we have created our entire training curriculum around, is to fill those skills. And by the way, it goes back to the evaluation that we use, because those are the skills that we're going to get a score on to see if you know how to do those things. Now, you would score really high in product knowledge, but you would score lower in a lot of these other business acumen skills that we just don't teach our salespeople. And so those are the three incorrects that we see a lot and that we work on internally. Outside of that,
can I dive into incorrect number 2 for a
Yeah.
moment?
Uh-huh.
So incorrect selling process. You talked about buyer aligned, and that we know we really don't know them enough. Um, I'm also going to bring in your history as a marketer. So one of the things that because I have a similar background, I did a lot of digital marketing. I ran an agency, but one of the things that I found that salespeople have not been trained well enough to do, and this is in general, is to take someone from, I call it, from a persona to a person, right? Or an ideal client profile to an ideal client. Right. We do
Yeah.
a lot of training on here's the specific questions and information you need to gather, but we don't do a lot of, I haven't seen a whole lot of really good, amazing sales teams that have a framework for how they, how do I have a buyer centric process that drives me along the right, conversations to have and actually work with them as a company and a person, rather than as the data I need to put into my CRM, right? Um, how do you help organizations kind of frame those conversations, or is that something that you do in this training to frame those conversations and kind of a framework for how we dive into this, how we make people real and understand and be curious and dive in and help them actually buy rather than do that checklist of, you're in prospecting, now you're in whatever ideal customer, now you're in proposal.
Yeah. 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 So you bring up such an important topic here, because I think we're in an era of the buyer-led sales process, right? So, and a lot of that is because there's such a proliferation of information that's available to buyers about what we sell, what our competitors look like. They can do a ton of research and find out a whole lot about us before they ever call us in. And our own consumer buying habits, we would prefer not to go to the store and go find the product on the store. We would prefer to pull out our cell phone and shop for what we want and have it delivered to our front door, and to have an incredible amount of information from things like people's own experience with having bought this product and what they think about it, the pros and cons, being able to shop competitive products side by side, shop on price, shop on feature, whatever it is, shop when we want to. It's all very curated to how we want to experience it. And yet, when we get into business buying situations, we love the way we're able to buy as a consumer, and we want more of this ability to control as a buyer the buying process, in business. And it's a little lacking, right? To the point that 70% of buyers surveyed said, like business buyers, like, I would prefer not to work with a salesperson at all. And if I did not have to, I would not. So I would buy this thing without a salesperson in a heartbeat. So that's where we are. However, when you look at those same buyers, they admit that there are times where these are high stakes decisions and I need guidance. And I would love a salesperson who could guide me through, someone who could consult with me and help me make a strong evaluation, build a strong business case and a good rationale, and know that I'm making a confident decision, because I fear messing up, because that could be detrimental to the company and it could be career limiting for me. So, but what they say is we just don't find many salespeople that are that way. And I think our processes force our salespeople into certain kind of habits because we're measuring them by the process, opposed to measuring them by how they interact with and help the customer make a good decision. So when we work with companies in our consultancy, we don't just go in and train salespeople. We take a holistic look at their go-to-market approach. We want to know who those personas are, because the important thing is buyers tell us that the number one turnoff, the behavior of a salesperson that causes them to not want to buy from them the most, is that they do not understand them or their business. They just don't get me. They like, I see your product, but you don't understand what I have to go through and the pressures I have and how I'm measured and what we're trying to do for the business. And you just think you show me your product and I'm going to fall in love with it and make a decision. And I'm going to be able to draw all of the conclusions between I see what it does functionally, but here's what it creates as a value outcome. And I need help to understand that. And salespeople are not equipped to do it too often. So that's what we work with, is figuring all of those things out. Know your buyer and translate that into sales ready conversations, but also skill sets. So build a collaborative business case with them that is going to stand the scrutiny of that executive at the top of the organization that is going to say, why am I spending this money? What are we doing? Because I've got 5 other people asking me for the same money. And that's really what we're competing with first, is all the other projects that have nothing to do with what you sell, but that want the same money, time, attention, and focus. And it has to find priority in order for that to happen. And listen, companies know that there are a lot of problems within the organization, but not every problem gets time, money, and resources to fix it. A lot of problems like, yeah, we know, and we're going to live with it, and we're going to keep moving forward. That's why they call it work. So to rise to the level of investment, it has to be something that has to have a payoff, but salespeople have to understand that innately. So that's part of what we have to do, is we have to explore the issues that your normal customer, not just the one you can describe, but can you get inside of their daily issues and speak fluently to them in their language of value. So, and you got to be able also to speak that value language up the pyramid. So you have daily users who care about, is this going to make my job easier? It's going to, am I going to like this better than what I already have? Is it solving a daily problem in my workflow that I'm frustrated by? That's their value. But that doesn't necessarily get funded by the executive. The executive is like, okay, I see that. Like, I want to make people, happier here, but what's the alignment to a strategic priority, and what is the payoff? So if I buy it, it has to pay for itself multiple times over. How is it going to do that? And that's a different value lens. And so that's what we teach, is how to be able to be really fluent in those evaluations and conversations up and down the pyramid, and then align your process to that.
Yeah, I think this is top of mind for me. So I'm going to see if I can pull an analogy, but I just went to, it was a phenomenal leadership seminar, and it was on this idea of leading for impact versus leading for validation. And like, when you lead for validation, it's all about you, right? It's I'm gonna lead the company. It's all about me. And then when you lead for impact, it is all about them. And one of the things that really struck out to me in terms of sales is how often our processes are really, how often I've seen processes built to lead for validation. I'm going to validate our business proposition. I'm going to gather information to make the executive look good. I'm going to, rather than giving a process and the ability for a rep to have those conversations up and down the chain and lead their prospect for impact, right? And to truly make that impact and understand it up and down the chain. So rather than, and I'm a big proponent of the same thing, like having a framework, we do need to check off some boxes. We need to understand, we need to have a process, we need to have a repeatable, but I really think that process and that framework is the core function of it, is to help us dive deep and understand, and then strategize collaboratively with our client, not to how you generally see it, which is lead comes in, demo, core objections, proposal,
Right.
And so I actually like the shift that we're seeing in that and we talked about AI. I like the shift that we're seeing with AI because it can start to take away some of those surface level things in our processes and force everybody that's good to dive into the deep end. What are your thoughts on that? I just kind of threw that at you.
For sure, 100%. And the way I think about it is that customers don't buy in a linear fashion. So their process is not strictly adhering to sort of a started A, ended Z, and you don't skip around, right? So we don't go A, G, that's the way we design process. Our sales process is stage 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a checklist of things that say, hey, we can go to stage 2 if we've completed all this. However, we find the buyer doing checklist items that are in stage 5 and they haven't completed stage 2 yet. And so then do we put them in stage 5? Well, I don't know. And it's like, so where am I really? And we're trying to force our understanding of where the customer's thinking is into our sales process design. And the truth is, buyers, just like really all of us are buyers. We all buy things. And so if we just examine the way we would do that, we don't we don't always start in a very linear fashion. We will bounce around and sometimes we're doing multiple things at the same time. I'm calling over here to check on this, and I'm getting a reference or referral. I'm seeking input over here. And if we map those in the stages and checklists, we would be all over the place. There's circulating right now a really great graphic that puts a fine point on this. This is by Gartner. It talks about the buyer journey. And it is like lines going all over the place and circling back and boxes and pathways. And that's the true buyer journey, especially when it's not one person making a decision. It's a committee of people. It's a cross-functional decision. It's complex and expensive. And you're trying to solve a really important, valuable issue for the company. So we get stuck, I think, in relying too heavily on this linear selling process that in no way matches the way the customer is actually buying and behaving. And so this is why I think buyer-led is really the process that where we really are and where we're going, and probably where we're going to be for a long, long time. Look, let's just relate it to how we used to have to buy a car, right? So I used to have to go to the dealership. And that guy would grab my keys, take the car I drove, take it somewhere on the lot over there, and like, we're going to look at it for your trade. And then I didn't even know where it was, and like I had to sit there in the dealership, I get a test drive, and then I'm waiting for his manager. He's forcing me into this process, and a lot of it was against my will. It's not really what I would prefer, to have to spend 6 hours at a dealership to get a price, right? But that was the game and that was the process. And I was forced into it because I didn't have an option. Okay, today I can buy a car online. I don't have to talk to a salesperson. I can have it delivered to my front door, and I can sell my car either to them or to a whole lot of other places. And it is super, super convenient, and it is on my terms. That's the way I would prefer to buy. So in a business buying situation, we have to realize that that's because of advances in technology. This is the way buyers want to buy from us. So we have to kind of match the idea of working with the customer to understand how they want to buy. And then, yes, keeping track of all the important things and having a framework that helps us understand where we are and what we need to go get done. I think that's the value of the framework. So we don't miss things, and we can get unstuck when we're stuck, because we can look at what's not been done and what's missing. But know that the buyer's not going to, their journey to get to there is not going to be the straight line journey on a road that we think it is. So it's collaborative and flexible, but that creates trust and creates decision confidence in the client way more than, oh, you can't be over there because you haven't done this checklist item yet.
Well, and I'm not necessarily, I'm going to word this. I don't think I'm challenging you here, but I don't even think it's a point of disagreement, but I want to make a clarification. Because one of the other things I think is extremely important for salespeople today, right? Number one, understanding that buyer journey, but then number two, being able to inject yourself to make strategic recommendations about that journey. That makes sense, right?
Yes.
It is a strategic recommendation. Hey, I'm hearing this, this, and this. You know what? You've never worked with us. I've never worked with you. Here's strategically, I think this fits. And I think that is like that is instead of a tactical, here's our next step, right? What people are really searching for, and the more I hear is that they are really searching for, okay, how does this actually work within my environment, and how do I strategically make that happen? So change management is so powerful, but being able to do it well. People are fed up like crazy on I don't want to talk to salespeople because it's just going to be the same four conversations. But when you start adding that value of that, I think it's probably always been that way, but I think it's even going more and more and more. We have to do that now. There's no other way to do it than to add that strategic value. Or we're going to go to, a lot of people are just going to go the way of the dodo, and it's because they can be replaced. The information gathering piece has already been replaced for the most part, and it's becoming even more. But yeah, that strategic thinking, that business value, and your focus on that is massively important, I think, for teams.
Well, I think we're in extreme agreement, actually. Yeah. So what you talk about, I think, is the skill of influence. So can we influence a customer's decision about how they want to buy? Can we strategically guide them to an efficient way that helps us accomplish what we need to accomplish as a team and as a person and for our company? Because we have to serve our company's interest as well. But I think, when the customer gets what they need and what they want, then most of the time our company and me personally as a salesperson, I'm going to get what I need and I want too. But there are times where the customer is looking for, like, help me do this the best way. And our ability to influence is going to be so important in a moment like that. But before a person is going to allow me to influence them, they have to believe that I'm competent, that I have credibility, and that there's high trust. And so before I'm ready to change my mind about the preconceived notions I have, which are all driven by my experience, my biases, and also the weight of the responsibility I feel, right? And give you agency over that as a third party coming into this conversation and allowing you to influence me to change my thoughts. I have to buy you as a credible source. And so those, again, is not about talking about your product. I mean, that's a necessary part of the conversation. It's about really believing you are a strategic partner.
Yep.
And that you have something that is valuable to me that I now have access to. And so I'm going to be trusting you. And okay, I can see that. So if we offer hey, you know what, here's what I would suggest to be the next best thing we can do, because I've seen this work a lot for other clients. Why don't we focus on this right now and get to this micro decision? Customers much more likely to say, okay, I'll go with you on that journey, than to try to impose this thing, which is all about our ability to put up a close one, when we haven't earned that ask by building the credibility and then therefore having the influence that we desire. So that's really kind of part of it. And collaborative buying and selling, that's really the nature of what we're talking about here. But you have to have the skill set to really earn that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and we may have spent too much time on this issue, but just to wrap it all around, I don't think we have. I think it's one to dive into. To wrap it all around, I think the market shifts are demanding that uh, higher skilled, better, like your evaluations do, higher skilled, more effective, more trained person that leverages tools rather than replacing people. So I think it's just demanding that right now. And one of the things I'm interested in, and maybe we could round off on this, but how do you see organizations, actually smaller organizations like you're working with, when we know that's the case, right? But we also know that sometimes it's going to take 3 to 6 to 12 months for a rep to be able to have those conversations really, really well. Right? I think it's a natural part of learning. How do you see them dealing with that? Are they moving more towards only hiring experienced reps? Are they doubling down on training like yours? Are you seeing in the market right now?
Yeah. So first of all, we walk into a situation and there's an existing team, right? And so it's almost never a good idea to say, well, let's get rid of everybody that's on the team and start over and it's only hire, the ideal type of a salesperson that is exactly where we want them to be skill set wise and all of that, using our assessment. Like that's not even a practical thing to do. It's way too disruptive to the business. And frankly, it would probably, point you in the wrong direction for too long. So what we have to do, first of all, is just kind of like figure out where the team is, understand the gaps that we have to close, and focus on those things that are going to be the highest value, the quickest. But we have to work with the team we have in place. Now, sometimes we have to make some decisions. Do we have maybe one or two people who are here who just can't make the journey? And those are hard decisions, like, because we're talking about a person, their livelihood. But, we do have a business to run and we have that decision to make. And so we want to make that in the best way and in the most humane way and really help them go find the thing that's going to be best for them if it's not going to be here. And then backfill the hire with a closer match to the skill sets that we're looking for, because we're using an evaluation, not just a resume, to guide us to that better hiring decision. Because we've got to close this revolving door of sales hires that don't work out. And typically that takes us minimum of 9 months, but most often, a person struggles for 2 years before they're exited. So that's the first thing. Is like, let's work with the team that we have and be committed to putting a program in place that's going to get them there, and isolate the skills that are going to be most important. The second thing is there is a journey between learning and doing. And too often companies will invest in training, which is the learning layer. So someone comes in, maybe even like me, and we deliver knowledge. We teach a discovery method, or we teach a medic, sales process, whatever that is. And then we go away, and we were there for, maybe as much as 6 weeks, whatever, and we're gone. But then if I call those clients up in 6 months and I say, how's it going? And, what do your sales results look like? And do you see the change that you're looking for? Which, by the way, is what they bought, really. They bought the improved sales results, not just the training. The training was supposed to create a better outcome. But when we talk about it, it's like, too often it's like, well, we're working on it. And they'll reassure me and say, oh, your training was awesome. Everybody loved you, all this stuff, right? But the problem is we didn't get to the impact. So we didn't go from learning to doing. That journey actually is through a lot of reinforcement, a lot of spot coaching, a lot of role playing, a lot of breaking down what's going on and what's working, some adjustments along the way to test our assumptions that we made and adjust them to reality. But it's teaching the sales leadership how to coach and hold people accountable to the training that you delivered. that's the entire journey to get to doing. And so you have to be resilient and know as an organization, you're buying a behavioral change management process. That's really what you're buying. You're not buying sales training. That's a tool that's going to get you to the behavioral change. And that behavioral change is going to create the higher outcome that you're looking for, that you're relying on, which ultimately you're buying the result that you desire. So I stopped selling sales training. And what I tell my customer is I'm not in the content delivery business. I'm in the impact making business. And so we have to go all the way from learning to doing. And that means that I have to stick around a while, and we have to, do more of these things, because we're going to have a conversation that's not going to be a great conversation in 6 months if we stop short of the goal. So my engagements are kind of retainer based over, normally 6 months, and we will address a lot of stuff in that 6 months. Training part of it, coaching, behavioral changes, how we run deal review meetings, how we do forecast meetings. Are we learning the language and speaking it? All of those things, but also working with marketing and looking at our go-to-market and thinking about the sales aids and cheat sheets and how we take our technology and visualize our processes in the technology and all of those kinds of things. And I think that's the difference. And so some customers are not ready for that journey, and they don't understand that that's really what it takes. And so we just politely say we're not right for each other right now. But those who are ready, they see the benefit of that outcome and the investment they make, even though it's a little more than what they thought, because you can buy the sales training for cheaper, but the sales transformation, it will cost you more, but the payoff is higher.
Yeah.
And those are the conversations that we have with prospective clients and to decide if we're a right fit for each other. But they're the most valuable, and it's how I want to build my reputation. I want to build my reputation not on like he's a great trainer. I want to build my reputation on he's a difference maker. So that's the way
leading for impact. I love it. And so with that, I think one of the things I'll just mention, I love, you are a Membrain partner. I love working with you for that reason, right? Because we're both in that transformation game. We provide the technology that helps people do it, and you provide the services and the know-how and so it's a brilliant. I love that partnership. And how do people reach out to you and get in touch if they want to find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach me by email at steve@venatas.com. So Venatas is Venatas, Venatas.com. And by the way, Venatas is the ancient Greek word for competition. And it means, literally translated, it means striving together. What they noticed is an athlete that would just compete by themselves would top out, would achieve a certain level and really didn't break through. But you put another athlete competing with them, striving together, they both did better than they ever did individually because of the competitive spirit there, right? So we help teams strive together to raise the floor and the ceiling. So that's where all that came from. But yeah, steve@venatas.com will get me. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You can, connect with me there. We can DM. If you want to start a conversation around this, if you're looking, any of this stuff feels interesting to you, you want to keep talking about it, maybe look at how we might be able to help you with your team. But also, if you're looking to, consider Membrain, implement Membrain, and use your incredible toolkit to, help you manage these processes and run these sales motions, we can help you with that as well. So we're super excited about the opportunity to work with anybody out there that's interested.
Awesome. Well, Steve, it's been a great time, and I really thank you for all your insights. And we're going to have you back on to talk about the other side that we were talking about. We talked about the 3 incorrects and really dove down in there. We're going to have to talk about the market pressures, but we will. Let's do that. Let's maybe 6 months down the road, we'll get on. Then we'll be diving into that together. Sound good?
I'd love to do that. Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate the opportunity, to be on your show today and have this conversation, but also to be a Membrain partner and, to be able to be part of that powerful ecosystem.
Well, we love having you a part of it, and let's go. Let's shine bright, everybody. So everybody, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for listening. And as always, like, subscribe, and share. Make sure you're getting the message that Steve just gave us out there. And we'll make sure that we clip different parts and get it out for you too, so you can have a nice bite-sized fashion. But thank you so much. Have an amazing day, and we'll talk to you all soon.